Hi there, my name is Dalton Ruhr. I'm the Master Principal Solution Architect on our Partner Solutions team, and this is part of a longer series on Qlik and Snowflake Cortex. Today is the second video in my series, specifically focusing on Cortex AI-SQL. In my previous video, I mentioned that Cortex AI-SQL is a wraparound AI functionality. That allows data engineers that are very SQL savvy to invoke AI functionality at scale without necessarily having the need for data science programming. In this video, we're going to take a look at how that is done. So let's dive right in. All right, let's go ahead and take a look. I am in the Snowflake user interface here. I'm just running normal SQL. Hey, select star from a table. Yay! Everybody's done that. I can get the information. I see these comments. Yay, I've got a comment. I could certainly sit down and hire an army of people to analyze that manually to say, hey, is that a good comment or is it a bad comment? But let's face it, we're not hiring armies of people. We need AI to take advantage of that. Well, one of the things that Cortex AI SQL provides is functions like this. It's a sentiment function that wraps what you would normally do in Python to calculate sentiment. So now as I'm doing my select the ID field, select the satisfaction score, select a nursing score, select my survey comments, and by the way, go do that, that sentiment stuff on my comments. And now I can get a result that would give me, ooh, yeah, that was positive. Oop, this one was negative. Oop, this one was positive. Oop, that was negative. Wow, I just saved an army of people trying to do evaluations and hoping that they had their coffee early in the mornings before their responses were all negative. Well, the neat thing about this function is that you can actually make it a little bit more focused. Rather than just asking for that overall sentiment, you can actually narrow this down and say, hey, you know what? I want that overall satisfaction, but I want to focus on nurses, and I want to focus on physician care, and I want to focus on overall clinical care, and I want to focus on food. So that now, instead of just getting the overall, ooh, it was positive, we know which areas were positive or negative because there could be some on both sides of the coin. 3 of them could have been positive, 2 of them could have been negative, and we may never have known had we not dug into it. And again, all without an army of data scientists because they just wrapped that for us. Well, that's fantastic. One of the other things I mentioned before was that they also have this complete function where you get to ask it a question like you would in a chatbot type of environment, and you can tell it which large language model to use. And you can pass it as fine-tuned a prompt as you want. And so in this particular prompt, I'm saying, hey, you're an expert survey analyst. I want you to evaluate this. I want you to give me feedback. But hey, I don't need positive or negative sentiment. I want action-oriented recommendations. I want you to tell me what you think we can do to improve, things that we were recognized on, that were positive, that we should pat people on the back, give them gold stars, give them a smiley face on their papers, whatever, and give me an array of things that we could improve on. And I can give it what that question could have been. This is a rather lengthy type of a response. And if I were to go off and run this, I want to show you that I can certainly do that. And this could have been because somebody handed me this and they wanted me to analyze it. Well, if I go look at this, let me make this a little bit larger. Hey, here's the areas for improvement. Your first line support communication needs to be improved, right? It'd be nice to do this. And it shows me where this is in there because it's citing the examples. It's not making these things up, right? Hey, your ticket closure timing needs to be improved, yada, 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 right? That's kind of cool to me, right? I didn't know anything about data science. I simply called their Cortex Complete function. Well, guess what I'd like to do? I know I've got these surveys. I know I've got those comments. I want to analyze this. And what I'd like to do is get a list of primary, secondary, or tertiary emotional dyads separate separated with a hyphen using the Plutchik Wheel of Emotions for my nursing staff, physicians, overall care, administration, food quality, and room cleanliness if they exist, or just ignore them if they don't exist. Put the output in a JSON block. Again, very highly tuned prompt, right? And what I'm going to do is pass it my survey comments. So I could run this on the fly now, just like I did where I was asking just for the sentiment. The purpose of this, and you can look um, this wheel of emotions up to understand what emotional dyads are. But it gives you the idea of basically categorizing some of these words so that you could then take those words, put them into a word cloud, and be able to have an understanding of what people are feeling. Not what they've said, whether it was just positive or negative one way or the other. But you get words here that are emotional. So that when we see things like anticipation and anger, those physicians would be drawn to those words in a word cloud versus, your sentiment went down 0.01%. Hopefully that makes sense. That's how we take advantage of that right within Snowflake's UI. Again, it is literally just a wrap around those types of AI functionality. And there's more of those functions like sentiment that they provide. I just wanted to give you one example. As I mentioned in the last video, Qlik interacts with Cortex AI-SQL on both ends of your data pipeline. Right now, I'm going to show you how we can operationalize Cortex AI-SQL that you saw as part of a data pipeline so that anyone can then tap into that AI enriched data that would then be stored in Snowflake. Let's dive right in. Okay, we're going to take a look now at how we would capitalize on that kind of functionality that Cortex AI-SQL provides right while we're in our data pipeline. Hey, I'm reading my healthcare data from SQL Server somewhere that's in my EHR. I'm going to do my typical landing. I'm going to do my typical storage. I can do data marks. I'm doing, my bronze, silver, gold layers. And oh, by the way, I would really like to operationalize what you saw in the demo for the functions themselves so that I can then store that. Now anybody can tap into those answers without having to go to a user interface or hand typing those long things, right? I did have to do prompt engineering, even though I didn't have to do the data science. So we have these transformation flows. So I'm going to go ahead and open this transformation flow up. I bring in my surveys. I run it through this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what this flow would look like. Hey, I can bring my surveys in. I want to pick the columns that I want, which is just the survey comments. I could do joins or unions or aggregates or filters or blah, 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 blah. But the cool thing is there's an AI one. And that AI one is tuned right for Cortex AI-SQL. I simply choose, I would like to do a translation. I would like to do a summarization. No, I want to do a classification function. And you choose what that is and then what that column output would be. Well, to take advantage of that Cortex Complete function, that is SQL. That's not just a function like sentiment or classification or summaries. And so I just use a SQL expression. And so the SQL expression, hey, I want the column is going to be called survey emotions. I want it to be 4,000 in length. And all I'm doing is calling that same Snowflake Cortex Complete that you saw in the user interface. And I'm passing in, hey, aggregate these things into these emotional dyads that you've never heard about. I want you to hyphen separate them using Plutchik Wheel of Emotions. And you pass the survey comments row by row by row as they're coming in. Now I'm going to jump back to my SQL interface and show you then how that would get output. And so now if I look at this table, I have that information out here, and now those things are stored. So that if I wanted to look at those, you would be able to see what we've already done, right? I showed you these things before, but now this is operationalized. Anybody can go select this data right out of this table. You gotta be loving that. Finally today, I want to show you how Qlik can tap all that AI enriched data that's now been operationalized within Snowflake. There's no need to demonstrate how Qlik can read that data out of a table because you know that we can do that. Instead, what I'm going to focus this demo on is how seamlessly Qlik can capitalize on the Cortex Complete functionality while they're working. Now they can ask questions about the data and take advantage of the collective wisdom of the world that is sitting there in those underlying large language models to augment what they can't see on the screen, what they may not already know about their data, as well as get suggestions that aren't even in the data. Let's dig in. All right, we're about to wrap this up. You understand how Qlik works as an analytics tool, right? You know that you can track KPIs across giant models. You know how everything is interactive. If I pick months and I focus down, you know that everything is responsive. And I can dive into this. And depending how data literate I am, I can get insights about lots of different things. This is a complete orders to cash model for SAP. On this screen, you can see we can do the same normal type of BI information. I can present KPIs. I can allow you to toggle between what you're seeing on the charts. I'd rather look at profit. No, I would rather today look at customer details, etc. On the right side of the screen here, you can see how this is integrated with Cortex AI-SQL through that complete. The same thing we ran that, hey, I want to ask you a question about this. Go do something that I don't even know how to do. I'm passing the question. Can you give me a short overall executive summary of how we're doing that I can share with our CEO? Basically, hey, wrap this up in a pretty little bow for me to pass them. Now, I mentioned how everything else is interactive. Guess what? As I make a selection on my screen, notice that it is rerunning that query in Cortex AI-SQL, and it is responsive to my selections as well. So as I jump back and forth, if I were to narrow things down in any way, shape, or form, bam, this is all getting rerun so that they're getting the answer to their question from the selections you have made on the screen. Gotta be loving that. Well, let's dig in a little bit deeper. What I want to know is something that I can't figure out, right? Because I'm looking at billings and I've got billings by, all these different divisions, and I've got billings by organizations, but you know what? I've also got profit. And I've got profit by division, and I've got profit by organization, right? And depending on my data literacy level, I might be able to consume a chart like a SAN key where I start seeing these things related, but this is still only about billings, right? I wouldn't have to click on brown ale. I could figure out that Denver was the primary, but I can't see this in relation to net profit as well. Well, the great thing is I can ask some of those more relationship driven questions that are difficult even for people with data literacy skills who could handle a distribution plot or a scatter plot. So I'm going to re-ask that. I'm going to ask this question now instead. Are there any interesting insights about the relationship between billings and net profit? That's not something that's easy for people to necessarily get while they're looking at the screen. Let me go ahead and magnify this a little bit so it's a little bit larger. Hey, the division with highest billings does not necessarily have the highest profit. The Brownell division had the highest billings of 939 million, but it was Pale Ale that had the highest profit of 58 million. And it goes on and on and on and on. Which I think is fantastic, right? I'm now seeing relationship answers, not just, ooh, tell me how many billings I have, right? Well, the interesting thing is I can go even deeper, right? That gave a very encompassing view of all of my data rather than just a question about one dimension or the other. I can ask questions about things that's not even in my data. Are there any unique cultural conditions about the cities we are selling so much brown ale in. Because I can clearly see this, right? I've got the clue down here that it's Denver, but I have no idea what the cultural conditions are for cities. Hey, Frankfurt, Germany is where brown ale has the highest billings and net profit. This could be due to this because they have traditional beer styles, and Frankfurt is known for its rich beer culture and history, yada, 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 yada. Kind of neat. That's not even in data. Well, let's take it further. What can I do to start making money on this? Are there any cities in the world with similar cultures where we are selling brown ale that we're not already selling? Well, hey, Berlin, Buenos Aires, Florence, Gainesville, USA have similar cultures. Now, this answer here, I'm going to tell you, I can get a better answer in different models. On this part of the screen, this is only here for this particular question so that I can do the demo for you. You're not going to let your end users pick the models. But what you may want to do as you're building these out is find the model for the right types of questions. I might want to put this integration on the screen that says, ask about relationships. And I might have a different screen that's, hey, ask about insights for actions we could take, right? Action-oriented advice type questions. And I might find a different model then that would do that. I also put a nice button on the screen that would let you say, hey, here's all of the different models. You got to take these things into consideration. If you want to use this, here's how many tokens it would be. Here's how big a question you can get. And I did this so that you could see, man, there's an awful lot of different models you could potentially take advantage of. You just have to decide which ones of those you would want in the application. But hope you like the idea. I hope you get the power of being able to encapsulate and operationalize that Cortex AI-SQL functionality both at the beginning of the pipeline so that anybody can read it as structured data without knowing anything about SQL or data science, as well as being able to provide the ability for analysts and users to just ask questions about the data. Depending on their data literacy, they might need to ask things about stuff that's on different screens that they don't even have tied together because you didn't build them together. Or they could ask insights about really deep, multidimensional relationships that the AI in these large language models can take a look at, and you can ask for advice so that you know where to go as a direction in their. And I wouldn't say, hey, just rush right off and start a sales force in Berlin, Germany. You'd want to do research, but that narrowed it down to 4 cities that it thinks are similar in culture that you probably would want to go research. Hope that you have a great day. Be sure and stay tuned for my final video in the series where I'm going to walk you through how this is actually done. So if you're the person in your organization that needs to do this, you're going to be able to. Have a great day.